Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Hawthorne High School. I am John Green. I have the pleasure to serve as the principal here. Thank you all for coming out for our rezoning district meeting 1 tonight, and we'll get this meeting started.
Thank you, Mr. Green, and to all your staff for your hospitality this evening. My name is Jackie Johnson. I am the Director of Communications for Alachua County Public Schools, and I'm happy to welcome you to our first community input session on rezoning for the fall. I'd like to introduce the board members. All of them are here tonight. Tina Certain, our chair, Leonetta McNeely, our vice chair, Kay Abbott, board member, Diane McGraw, board member, and Dr. Sarah Rockwell, who's a board member. At this time, Ms. Certain has some brief remarks for you, so I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Certain.
Good evening, everyone. It's so good to have you all here. Thank you all for coming out. We look forward to hearing from you all as we undertake this process of rezoning our district. It's the first time we've endeavored to do this since 1983 on a comprehensive nature, so we have a lot of work to do, and we're here to listen to you all. We hope you will take a moment to look at the maps in the back after you've heard from Dr. Edwards, but please do give us your feedback, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Ms. Certain. Before we get started, I'm going to give you a quick rundown on how tonight is going to go. Dr. Edwards is going to give a brief presentation about rezoning, and then we're going to begin hearing from you. We've got a microphone here. When it's time, I'm going to ask anybody who would like to speak to line up behind the microphone. Ms. Certain will ask the next speaker to come up when it's their turn. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board, and then we'll turn it over to the next person. There's a timer, which you'll be able to see clearly when you're at the microphone. That will count down from 2 minutes, so you'll be able to tell at any time how much time you have left. If you have input, but you don't want to speak tonight, that is absolutely fine. What you can do is send your input to a special email box that we've set up. It is rezoning@gm.sbac.edu, and you can just email us your input at any time. We are recording this meeting, so I do want to let you know the video of this meeting will be available on our rezoning website, which is sbac.edu/rezoning. There are a couple of handouts that I think you'll find very useful. One is a list of answers to very commonly asked questions about the rezoning process. As you can imagine, since we started this process back in April, May, we've gotten a lot of questions from folks, and so what we do is takes the ones that we've been asked most often, and we've answered them on this sheet, but we also have the website on the back where we have more questions and answers on the website as well. There are copies of 3 maps that show the current zones for each school, and those are outlined in black. And then there are colors that show the proposed zones, and I want to stress the word proposed. We have several more community input sessions and a number of public school board meetings that we're going to be having before we finalize any maps and before the board votes on new zones, which will happen on November 7th. So there's a lot of work that has to happen between now and then until we have an actual final set of maps that's approved by the board. One of the things we've also put on our website is what we call the lookup system and interactive maps. What that allows you to do is you can go onto that site, you can plug in an address, it will show you a list of the schools that are zoned for that address now and the proposed schools. Again, proposed schools based on these current maps. It will also allow you to pinpoint that address on maps, on actual maps, so you can see where that address falls within the different zones for elementary, middle, and high school. The easy way to find all of those things is on the back of the input form, and that is on this sheet. It's got a bunch of QR codes on it, and these QR codes will get you directly to links that are related to rezoning. For example, the first one has a link to the overall rezoning page where you can find maps, frequently asked questions, a list of past meetings and videos of past meetings on rezoning, a list of upcoming meetings, policies related to rezoning. So that's on the first QR code. The PowerPoint presentation that you're going to see tonight, if you want to follow along on your phone, you can use the second QR code on this page. The third one will get you directly to that interactive map and the lookup zone that I told you about. So you can get directly to that from here. You can also see the static maps on the 4th QR code, and the 5th QR code is also the input sheet. So if you've got some input you want to email in, that's the QR code that you would use for that. That sheet will get you where you need to go when it comes to rezoning. With that, I am going to turn things over to Dr. Edwards.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Jackie. We are going to go over and review the information that was shared at our board workshop as it relates to zoning, and from there to give you the opportunity to ask questions or share input, as Ms. Johnson has already indicated. So as we move forward, looking at our objectives, which is to align our student enrollment with school capacity. And so we know that currently we have some schools that are over capacity, and we're wanting to make sure that across the board we have space for all of our students to have best learning opportunities throughout the district. As we do that, we're prioritizing our fiscal responsibility and efficiency, focusing on facilities, transportation, and personnel throughout the district. When we began working on this rezoning focus, we had a methodology that really looks at what our constraints are. And so how many things do we need to really consider as we're making decisions that may be some things that impact us or serve as barriers. And we recognize that transportation, there are definitely some challenges that are proposed with number of drivers, the length of routes for students, the number of routes that we have throughout the district, the school capacity and how many seats are allowable in each of our schools is really important. And when we talk about capacity, we're talking about the actual building and not portable sites. So we don't want to have lots of portables. That becomes another fiscal concern that we have, because that's additional expenditures that we are sharing in our district to funding portables on campuses. And then we're also looking at our magnet enrollments, knowing that when students choose or select to go to a magnet program, if approved, then that actually impacts the seat count at those schools, as well as other programs that we have in schools. When we look at our school capacity, on this particular sheet, which is in the presentation that's online currently, you'll see the capacity with the percent enrolled from the greatest enrollment, or is most over capacity currently. And so right now at the elementary school level, that is Newberry Elementary School with 141% enrolled. So currently they have 665 kids enrolled, yet their capacity is only 471. And so that's how that is determined or calculated. When we look at enrollment, we realize that we are focusing on 90% or above as capacity for schools. And so sometimes, when people are thinking about that, they're looking at the 100% capacity, but we start at 90% and move forward. And so the least enrolled school, or the lowest amount of students or an amount of seats that are taken at a school that has capacity, is Lake Forest. They have 56% of the seats taken at their school. When we look at our brick and mortar buildings and the capacity for it, our middle school level, right now Fort Clark is at 110%, but you can see that Mabane at the bottom of this screen or the chart is at 43%. So we have plenty of seats that are available in some of our schools. Lincoln has 69, Westwood 76, Bishop 78. Those schools have additional seats that are available for students to actually enroll or be zoned to those schools and continue on with their academic instruction for the course of their school years. And so we're trying to more or less level that field, realizing as well in that initial slide when we're talking about the methodology, when we're talking about the focus and prioritization for finances, that when we look at personnel, we also realize that when schools are over capacity, we're spending additional dollars in trying to make sure that we have the teachers that are available and, additional supervision resources and those sorts of things. So when we have more kids, there is more strain within the building in terms of maintaining supervision, but also in personnel. And so when we start looking at allocations for instruction, those are some important considerations. When we look at our high school numbers, Buchholz currently is at 124% of its capacity. Newberry over 100% with 105. But Lofton is at 53, Eastside 62, and here at Hawthorne Middle High School, 69%. That means that Mr. Green, our school principal, thank you for hosting Mr. Green tonight, has plenty of seats available to enroll students currently. And so we would like to consider that as we move forward. So the proposed maps that Ms. Johnson shared, there are some in the back that are at the back of the room tonight, but they're also on our rezoning page for the district. And the interactive maps are aligned with the maps that were shared at our school board workshop. The maps have not changed at this point in time. That does not mean that there are lines that will not change. But as we are sharing the proposed maps, we are keeping it consistent with what was first released to the community and public. But as we move forward, we will be getting data uploaded that is directly tied to where we are now in the 23-24 school year. So later this week, we'll be uploading through the agency we're working with our current numbers now that we're going through this 10-day count process and we're a little bit more stable in terms of who are the students who are enrolled in Alachua County Public Schools. For the maps that you are looking at, those lines were drawn based on the data that was provided to us as of February 10th, 2023, during the end of our FTE period. And so that is why it is important for us to look at potential changes. So here is a proposed elementary school rezone for 24-25. Ms. Johnson has already shared with you that those bolded lines are those zoned areas for current, but the shaded areas are the proposed zoning, right? And so that is inclusive of students who would attend schools in the 24-25 school year. The same is true as you look at middle school. And so I think this may be a clearer depiction when you can see, for instance, in Fort Clark in the center is light blue, but Westwood stands out in the red, and it reaches into the areas of Mebane and some of Fort Clark. So those students who are currently at Mebane or Fort Clark would be going to Westwood because Westwood's zone is being expanded. And then high school is outlined in the same manner. So considerations as we move forward is the revitalization of some of our schools, such as Littlewood, which would reopen in 25-26. And I think that, we have heard feedback from some related to Littlewood. We recognize that as the lines, again, as I've said, they were based on last year's numbers. There are considerations we have to take into place. I know even, our school principal has shared concerns because we know that we'll be in a swing school for the upcoming school year and then back online with additional seats. So we'll look at all of those lines, the concerns that people have sent in the community to make sure that we are having the appropriate spaces and taking into consideration all the factors. Also, Westwood Middle School will be reopening in 24-25, and during that school year, there will be additional seats available there. Some of the impacts on our enrollment is the expansion of the school voucher program, the increase in the number of charter schools that are available. Also, our home, private, and virtual schools have to be considered because these are selections that parents may make to enroll their children in other entities. As well, the consideration of our magnet programs and dual enrollment. And so when we are looking at enrollment for magnet programs at the various schools, we're also considering the number of students we allow to enter into a program. We have magnet programs at over-enrolled schools at the very beginning. Also, what happens if a student who is at a magnet program would select to remain at a school after they have enrolled in a magnet program, for instance, starting in their 9th grade year, continuing midway through their 10th grade year, but then withdrawing from the magnet program. We want to make sure that those students are then returning back to their zoned school. And so when we have seat allotments for students in magnet, they really do need to be participating in the magnet program at that school. And so we've had some discussions about ensuring that our procedures are in place for that, but we also wanted to make sure that the public was clear that those students who are currently in magnet programs would have the opportunity to continue on in the magnet that they're in. We would not take them out of the program and move them, even with the rezone lines being shared. So again, revisiting our objectives, we want to align our enrollment in our district with the school capacity that exists. And we also want to make sure that as we do that, we're considering all of the fiscal responsibility and the necessity for efficiency for facilities, transportation, and personnel, so that as we are thinking about outcomes, all of these considerations are taken into account. Ms. Johnson has shared with everyone tonight that there is a series of community input sessions, so you can see that on the rezoning site as well. And so this just lists what those are. We are here today at Hawthorne Middle High School, but on the 24th, which is Thursday, we will be at Howard Bishop. And then we'll continue on through Santa Fe, Kannapaha, the SWAG Family Resource Center, Newberry, and Gainesville High Schools. And then we have a series of school board meeting dates. September 19th is when we will have first reading for our rezoning process. October 17th will be a public hearing, and then on the 7th of November is when we would come back for second reading, and is when we would be looking to our board to vote on the comprehensive rezoning plan. And at this time, we'll give you the opportunity to come and share any questions or comments you may have. We will ask that you would come to the mic so that we can hear you, especially for those listening online.
My question is, it's kind of, I don't know what you would call it, but after you visit Newberry and the west side of Gainesville and Alachua, and you change the lines, how are we going to give feedback to what changes that you make out here? I'll make it a little simpler. Once you talk to the west side of Gainesville, west side of Alachua County, and you agree to make changes that they ask for, what input are we going to have?
So we are taking all of the input at once. We're not coming to Hawthorne, making changes at Hawthorne, then going to Newberry and making changes at Newberry. We're going to each of the community input sessions to hear what any residents of Alachua County may want to share with us as it relates to comprehensive rezoning, and then we will take a summary of that information to make best decisions as it relates to our priorities. So it won't be a flip-flop or we're doing what's happening on the west and then Hawthorne doesn't get an opportunity, or whomever's on the east side of town doesn't have an opportunity to share.
Good evening. Just wanted to ask the question. Even with the zoning out here, I saw that our capacity is like 660. So what I'm saying with the kids like that go to Hawthorne now, we don't really have to worry about them being rezoned to a school in Gainesville, but we might be getting some areas where we will have kids coming from areas that close in Gainesville that can come to Hawthorne. Is that what I'm looking at? Or I'm reading this wrong?
We are looking at capacity. So yes, you are correct in the sense that if a school is significantly under-enrolled, we would not be moving students out of that zone unless for some reason there was another one of those priorities that definitely impacted it. You'll see on the rezoning map that you won't recognize that for Hawthorne. Our goal would be to move and add students into where there are empty seats.
Okay, that's my question. Because I know now, like, we might be under-enrolled. If we got 660, then there's a possibility that kids will come in, but not really affecting our kids that are right here in Hawthorne to go that way. Thank you.
I want to thank each of you all for coming out tonight and giving us your feedback. As Ms. Johnson said at the beginning of the meeting, if you chose not to speak tonight, that there are a couple ways that you can still give us feedback. There are paper forms in the back of the room, and there's an email address that she gave out, rezoning at gm.sbac.edu. There's a QR code. So we have multiple methods of receiving feedback from you. And if you know of someone who was not able to attend tonight's meeting and they want to give input in person, please share with them the dates that are on the back of this, the handout, or you can send them to the website and they can see the dates. We really want to hear from everyone. We recognize that there will be some decisions that will be made, and we won't please everyone in the county, but we are really trying to do our best to listen to the citizens of Alachua County as we undertake this very important process in the operation of our school district. So thank you, and if there's no other input tonight, we're going to say we're adjourned.